Start sharing my screen. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, I'm Alexa Bracetta. I am a CFP and I'm the owner of Aligned Wealth Strategies. Nikita asked me to come on today to talk to you all about budgeting and saving primarily for times of uncertainty, meaning let's see if I can get my screen to rotate through. So the purpose is really financial stability in unpredictability. And in the beauty industry, I know that you have busy months, you have slower months, you have months when, especially working with and partnering with a company like Blush, where you're doing more weddings, you're doing more events, and then there's months where you don't really have that additional income. So how do you plan a life where some months are really good and some months are just a bit slower? And that's true of most industries, but I think in the beauty profession in particular, you know, the holidays, everyone wants to look really nice and all the pictures are going to be taken, so you guys are particularly busy. And in the summer months, it might be just a little bit slower, and even anything picking up right around school time as well. So wanted to talk about how you can give yourself stability in those times today. So the first thing that I want you to do is understanding your flow of money. And when you work in a business and have your own business and are a 1099 contractor with maybe some multiple other businesses as well, understanding your flow and what you need is mostly important. And when you are a business owner or you are someone who is a contractor with someone, you have to understand that from two places. And that comes from a tax perspective as well, just as a flow from income perspective. So you need to understand your personal expenses and you need to think of those in two different ways. What are my fixed expenses? What are my bills? What is my rent? What is my mortgage? What is all of those things that you have to pay? And then what are the things that I want? Do I love going to the gym? Do I need to buy more clothing? Do I enjoy dining out? And on the business side, you have the fixed expenses. You know, you have your booth rental, you have insurance, all the bills for product and all of those types of things as well. And then you have variable expenses such as training, additional product, new product, maybe some new supplies that need to come in. So all of those things together, then you have to look at your income. What's your main source? Your booth work, your main hair, makeup, any of those types of things. And then what are your regular income sources that kind of boost everything? So we have tips, which, you know, note that those get to be excluded from your income this year if you've reported them on your taxes. Your bridal and wedding work, your work as a blush stylist, additional income over the holidays. And then know what your net is. So this is understanding your flow. So what are my personal and business expenses, and subtract those from your total income. And that gives you your net income in a month. Now, if you look at your net, are you over that? Are you under that? And in looking at that net, you want to create a budget that's flexible. So of the money that you bring in, 50% should be those fixed expenses. So that's your needs, that's your bills, those are kind of everything that you have to pay. 30% should be those wants, going out, you know, the gym, extra clothes, all the things that you don't really need but you want. And then you should be putting about 20% towards savings or debt payoff if you are holding some debt. In the variable months, so the slow months, we want to look at just doing our base budget. That's what we have to cover. If there's not much wiggle room for anything else, that's okay. But you need to know what you need to make in those slow months to cover that slow income coming in the door. Then we have our busy months where we can have the full budgets. We can do the wants or the needs, wants, and extra savings. And if you can, in a perfect world, you're building in your saving into your needs. That's in a perfect world. I do understand that the world is not perfect, but if you can build in extra savings into your needs on a regular basis, that would be the smart thing to do. So if you are a person that works as a contractor, rents their own booth, has their own salon, any of those types of things, you need to think of taxes first. So If you are a W-2 employee, you can kind of ignore this, or maybe if you're thinking of being a contractor or going off on your own, maybe pay attention. But for the contractors slash owners, you should be setting aside on top before you do anything of it about 20 to 30% of your income. And it depends on how your tax structure is, and certainly discuss that with a CPA on what that would best look like for you. But you need to be setting aside money for your taxes first in a separate account that you're not going to be touching. And then you look at paying yourself. Make sure you're tracking your expenses. So your supplies, education, marketing, rents, all of that, because that does reduce your taxable income in looking at how much you need to be setting aside. Consider your ability to pay yourself a regular and reliable salary from what you have coming in the door. So if you're able to do that, there's some benefits to different corporate structures, such as the sub corp or the S corp, if you will. There's some benefits to paying yourself that regular salary and saving on those self-employment taxes. But that's what you should do first. So moving forward, as I talk about this presentation or just talk about managing your money, you have already pulled off the top your taxes. And that's what you need to do first, because you don't want to hit tax time and be like, oh goodness, how am I going to pay this bill? But again, I want to remind you, with the new tax legislation that passed, tips are excluded from your income, which is nice for you all in the beauty industry. So I want you from here on out to try and think of your money in buckets. So here's kind of the flow and priority list as I see it from good financial planning. So first, as I mentioned, taxes, setting those monies aside to pay your taxes. Then we have our base, and that's our needs as I described it. So this is just your basic expenses, your mortgage, your booth rental, those things that you have to pay. Then I want you to think of your slow month savings, because those have to account for our normal income. So you want to be backfilling some savings for those slow months in case your base income does not meet your needs. You want to be able to cover that. Then I want you to think of an emergency fund as well. This is money that we don't want to be touching in our slow months. This is, being unable to work. Say you get sick for a couple weeks and you can't work. That would qualify as an emergency to me. Your car breaks down, you lose your job. You want to have at least 3 to 6 months minimum base expenses in this account if you can. And then I want you to have a fun fund. Save for things like a trip, or upgrading your salon, or even a new car. You should be sending money there, so when you do go out to dinner, you don't feel guilty about it, because you do have that money set aside for that specific thing. Tools to use. I love budget apps. I think, and I love just data. If the more I know, the better. Some people love just a good old-fashioned spreadsheet. I refer a lot of people to Rocket Money. It has an automated savings program where it'll pull, based on algorithms and how you set it, to money in your checking account. It'll use how much is there, and it'll pull a specific amount that it's like, oh, this is kind of your normal spending. We're going to just throw $50 in your savings account, and it does it for you. I am a huge proponent of little automated savings every week. So $25 just going to your checking account or your savings account without even thinking about it, because you can easily spend $25 anywhere right now. You can walk into a convenience store and buy a drink and a couple snacks, and you spent $25. So sending that $25 to a savings account and just letting it sit there. If you don't like Rocket Money, there's You Need a Budget. It's YNAB, as a lot of people call it. It's pretty simple to understand. You do have to do a lot of work on it. I think Rocket Money is a little bit more intuitive. I really like that one. Or you can get really nitty gritty with it and do cash envelopes. Understand and track via hand or a spreadsheet, and put money in envelopes and have physical cash if you want to. There are some apps out there. I haven't played with them enough to make a recommendation, where you can kind of do this digitally versus physical cash as well. QuickBooks to track your business expenses, if you're not already doing that, is a great thing. You can, again, even use a spreadsheet if you're capable of, pulling everything in one place. And then using, the apps that you already use, Square, Gloss Genius, or Vagaro. They'll help you track your income and all of those various aspects as well. So how it works, in theory, again, we've already taken our taxes out, so we're excluding the tax conversation. So in this instance, the base income need is $2,500. That's like the expenses that you have to pay for. Your income for the month was $4,000. So you're going to pay your base needs of $2,500, and you're going to save $1,000. We're going to send $500 to the slow month fund and $500 to the emergency fund, and then you have $500 for extras. So you spent $3,000 for the month, ultimately. The slow month, our base need is $2,500. We have income that came in of $2,500. So we're going to use all that income for your base needs. But you do have a $750 necessary variable expense. Let's call it you needed new tires. And we have to pull that maybe from the slow month fund there. So you actually spent $3,250 for the month in a slow month, but you were able to cover it because you had the savings that came through the door. And we didn't also let the lifestyle creep happen in the busy month where you made more money. You put more to savings and save that for a month where you really needed it. So plan for success, whether you feel like you have this in hand and you're doing a lot of the things that I mentioned, and maybe this is validating, or you've never heard this before. I want you to leave here with some ideas or takeaways or action steps that you can do. I want you to track your income and expenses for 30 days daily. That's looking at everything you spend. Notice the days that you have no spend days. Those are really important, actually, to notice where and why you don't spend any money. So you really understand that first thing that I mentioned. What is your flow of money? What comes in, what goes out? Build your base and full budgets. So know what you have to spend in a month and know what you want to spend realistically in a month. Those are two different things. Open your separate bucket accounts. Again, you have your main checking account. I would have a main checking and business account personally. And then have your slow month savings fund, your emergency fund, and your fun fund. Ultimately, those are the 5 buckets I would think of, alongside your 6th one. If you're an independent contractor business owner, have your tax account as well. Pick a budgeting app or tool that is right for you. Again, you can just use a spreadsheet. There's lots of templates even within Microsoft that would help you do that. But again, I do really like Rocket Money. It kind of takes away the guesswork, and QuickBooks for personal. And then the last one, and the thing that will make you the most successful, is automate where you can. Again, recommending $25 to a savings account every Friday, if you will. And it just automatically happens. You could do 25 to one, 25 to another, whatever works for you. And then last thing I didn't put on here, but celebrate little wins. Celebrate when you get $1,000 in your emergency fund, or even $500, and then set your next target. You don't, when you say, oh my gosh, my 3 months of expenses that I need to have saved up for an emergency per se is $10,000, that's really daunting. But if you can get to that first 1,000, that's a huge win and a huge success. And then if you can just keep going and feeding off that success and taking little bites at a time, ultimately. So hopefully one of those things resonates with you, and maybe that's something that you'll go ahead and do today. But if you could take anything from that list, the automate where you can is probably going to be the one that helps you be most successful, because then you don't think about it. It just kind of happens. So consistency over perfection is really the name of the game. Life happens, life comes up. Things are expensive nowadays, and we can't really always control the prices of everything. But how can you be thinking about money in different buckets and making sure you're setting it aside? If you have any questions for me, I know there's a couple people on the call today. I'm happy to answer them. But if they come up later or they're too personal, here's my contact information. I would be happy to walk through your budgeting. I do work on a project basis. So it would be $300, just for example, to go through all of this with you and help you set it up and think about this in different capacities. So Thank you for having me here today. I know work as a stylist is unpredictable, but it's beautiful. And I'm grateful for the people in your profession and the work that you do, because I know I certainly use blush professionals and people within the beauty industry, and your work is meaningful. And I hope today this helped you be a little bit more successful financially. So thanks for having me today.
Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
did have one question for others as well that might be helpful. So, I do think a lot of people right now have their funds transferred into a personal bank account rather than
Mhm.
separating business and bank. How do you feel like the best would be to move forward if they currently are putting everything in just one bank account?
Everyone's brains think differently. So you have to acknowledge the way that your brain thinks. If you can manage everything in one bucket, good for you. You need to have a way of tracking it. But I think having two separate checking accounts for your personal and business needs, they're free to open. So it's not hard to do typically. And there's lots of online ones like Capital One that you can go to with no minimums. But I think separating the two really helps you get a handle on what's a business expense, what's a personal expense, and how do you separate those things.
Okay, cool.